It
You know,
won't
I
print. You're
still
like tearing
feel
it
that way
apart.
about my paper printer. It's 2022 and I still have problems with my paper printer.
Yeah, yeah. I've
And
I've given up on paper printers a long time ago, but uh, so I have a little uh, Ultimaker here,
yeah.
and it's courtesy of my friend Mike Bucket. He hooked me up with that, which is pretty cool. So I kind of like tinker around on it a little bit here and there. And it's a lot of fun. I just sometimes I follow people on like Instagram, stuff like that. And there's this guy called I don't know if we got screen showing, but this guy called JBV Creative.
Oh, yes.
You've
I
heard you
know
you
him
seen
well.
this guy?
He's awesome.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
he's really talented.
So kind of cool. Like he has all these things like something that reminded me of and I was actually kind of thinking about doing something like this until I saw his thing, and I was like, well, now I can't do it because it would just be a blatant copy of
Right.
somebody doing it way better than I could have. And but it reminded me of what Andrew did on live design a couple weeks ago.
Oh, with the
These
watch.
yeah, with the watch, and
Yeah,
these are
yeah.
like these escapement mechanisms that you can put on the wall. But he's got a lot of like really cool stuff in here, like I don't know, just counters and all this kind of cool stuff made out of like 3D printing kind of things. I would try to do stuff like this, and maybe
Yeah,
you can
these are
help me, but
so amazing. Wow.
yeah, like these are so cool. But I would always get messed up because of, I guess, like tolerances.
Hmm.
What's the rule of thumb for like making like look at the kind of tolerances that you need.
Yep.
You have to in 3D printers, like right, you have to think about tolerancing like a little bit differently, right? Like
Oh, yeah.
what's the lowdown on tolerances when it comes to printing in 3D?
Fantastic question. And people ask this all the time when it comes to
Yeah,
3D and they want to print moving components.
yeah.
Simple answer is if you want like something to spin around, have free motion.
Hmm.
I typically go with 0.2 millimeters clearance.
Point two
If you
for
want it to be
just
more
generally any printer.
for most hobbyist printers,
Goes
yeah,
on. Okay, point two.
probably your Ultimakers is definitely within that range.
Okay.
If you want it to be tighter and you want more friction,
Hmm.
drop down to like 0.15, zero point 0.1, and the lower you get, the more friction you're going to get. Thing is, typically when you're working with an Ultimaker hobbyist machine, you're working with like PLA plastic,
Yeah.
so it's going to wear down.
Okay.
So even if you print with like a half, like 0.05 millimeter, eventually it's going to open up to a
Mm.
0.2 millimeter. So that friction fit may not be so friction tight anymore.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
But
sometimes I'll make these things and it's like it's either way too loose or like won't move at all, and it just I could just never get it right. So you think just 0.2 millimeters is the right tolerance for that?
I would say zero point 0.2 out. And I would also say one of the amazing things about 3D printing is you could print in place assemblies.
Okay.
People do that all the time. And you take it off the build plate and it automatically moves.
Mm.
But if you want some really tight fits,
Yeah.
sometimes it's better to print the parts separately and combine and assemble them afterwards, because then you're able to print like some overlap, some
Okay.
interference in the
Yeah.
gap. If that makes sense.
Another thing
But
that he does here that's pretty cool is he puts like bearings and other parts in here, especially like with these escapement mechanisms. Like he's got
yeah, it's
so
so
like maybe
awesome.
there's like a press fit with those or something, but I
Right.
don't know if there's a good example of the bearings, but yeah, some bearings right there. What do you think the tolerance for that would be? Because you know what the bearing is going to be, and
Yeah.
that's going to be good. So it's still point 0.2.
I would add maybe zero point 0.1, zero point 0.2, something in there.
Okay.
Should get it to fit where it won't fall out.
Right. Okay. And you just press it in there or glue it in there, I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, I just thought these were really cool. So
Yeah,
thanks for
I
the
see
tips.
these.
Yeah,
They pop up
you're
on
going to
my
save me a bunch
Instagram.
of PLA. So
Yeah. Yeah, no, I follow all this stuff. It pops on my Instagram all the time. Um, but enough about that. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Happy Friday. And welcome to today's episode of Solidworks Live Design. I'm your host, Noah Zeef, and we have a really talented designer with us today. He's been doing SolidWorks for a long, long, long time. Mark Peterson. Mark, you there?
hey, I'm here, Noah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, thanks for being here. So we have a really exciting topic today, your top 10 favorite features. And I think it plays really well into specifically this time of year because we're thinking about what's new in SolidWorks 2023. So we're talking about the top 10 favorite features from someone who's used this software in and out, knows just so much about it. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you're going to share today?
Right. Yeah. So yeah, exactly what you just said. I think we're in kind of the what's new time of year,
Right.
it's starting to become cooler outside. Everybody's getting excited about, figuring out what's happening in SolidWorks 2023. We're thinking about what reseller events we can go to and some other things we can learn from the resellers like 3D scanning and printing and all that cool
Right.
stuff.
Right.
So it's that time of year, and
Yeah.
I just thought, why don't I just put together a list of my favorite enhancements? I've never even done that before, even really thought about it, and it was a lot more fun than I thought I would have doing it. I thought it would just be arduous task of searching for, PDFs and stuff on the internet. I actually had a really great time because it reminded me of all of the sort of things I use on a daily basis that I totally forgot were such a big deal like 10 years ago,
Right.
or like when I was in manufacturing and I needed this particular thing to fix a problem or whatever. And it just, I don't know. Yeah, it's been a real fun trip. So I've got 10 of my favorite enhancements, but it's hard to keep the list of 10. So I'm peppering in, some
Right.
other ones as we go. And I've got a whole list of like when these things were released, or at least what I think they were. I might be wrong on some of them, but
Right.
um, as far as I can remember and research, all the dates and stuff are pretty accurate.
I love when you were telling me about your ideas for this, that you weren't just going to focus on, yeah, some of the new features are fantastic, but you're going to pepper in some of the older ones, some of
Yeah.
the really useful ones that are really relevant to people who maybe aren't SolidWorks experts quite yet.
Yeah.
I think you mentioned 20 years you've been doing SolidWorks. Is that correct?
Yeah, about 20 years. Yeah, I started when I was in school for mechanical engineering, and I worked at a product development firm as a intern, getting paid pretty
Right.
much nothing, and just working all the time. I don't know. I started using CAD. They had SolidWorks and Pro E Wildfire at the time, and I would just ask them, can I come in on the weekends and, just, work? And they were like, yeah, sure. We're not paying you more, but yeah, you can come in. So, so I would like drive to work 20 minutes away from where I was living and like put my
Just because
headphones on
it's
and
what you
just,
wanted to do.
yeah, just because I didn't they didn't give me a license of it. I could only do it at the work computer. But yeah, I just couldn't stop doing it. I just loved like doing CAD, and I just thought it was so cool. You were like building something and it's going to be manufactured and you're going to see it. So we would do consumer products and medical devices and law enforcement products and like all kinds of crazy stuff. And it was never, it was never a dull moment there. And
Yeah, it never ceases to amaze me the different industries this stuff can be applied.
yeah.
So, 20 years, obviously an amazing feat. Let us know in the chat how long you've been using SolidWorks for. 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. I could speak personally. I've been more involved on the X design side. So a lot of the stuff Mark's going to cover today on the SolidWorks side is going to be new and interesting for me as well. So with that, I'll pass it over to you, Mark. Let's hear about your top 10 favorite enhancements in SolidWorks.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so I'm going to just use this PowerPoint just as like a thing to keep me on track so we don't go way too far over on time. Trust me, it's not a PowerPoint presentation. So, but what I am going to use here to kind of show off some of these enhancements is this lovely sewing machine data set. This was built by the legendary Mark Schneider, and it's absolutely incredible. And I just think it's just a great way for me to show you a lot of these enhancements. So let's kick it off here.
Definitely more to it that meets the eye, I would say.
That's for sure. And yeah, I'm gonna show you the guts of this thing, and so you're gonna be blown away, I think. So, and hey, maybe it's a project for our X design guru to
Yeah.
see if he can recreate some of this in X design. So
Absolutely, we'd love to take it on.
yeah, I mean it's a very capable tool, so I don't think you'll have any trouble. But so these are my top enhancements. I'm still using that gift packaging theme from the thumbnail. So so we're just going to go through these one by one. So let's look at the first one is quick filter. All right, so I'm going to head back over here to my SolidWorks window. And this is just kind of what you start with in SolidWorks when you load up. And something I actually, just as another kind of side, is this welcome window. So this was updated in 2018, and I really like this. It includes like kind of your home page here and these other tabs like your recent documents, some things here where you can learn, some tutorials. Maybe you want to get some certification, for example. Click this button for that one. Shout out to Mike again. Some alerts like, if you want to know what the latest SolidWorks version is that you can download, grab it right there.
I love
But
that. Right there when you open SolidWorks, sorry.
yeah, right there. So Yeah, and then, here you've got some recent folders, some other resources, like if you want to check out a user group, click on this button, it'll open up a web page and you can find the closest user group to you, get some more tips and tricks. So definitely check this stuff out. Some tips down here too, this little light bulb that we just always ignore. This used to be in a bad location. I much prefer it here on the home page. I think it used to be down here in the bottom right-hand corner. I didn't like that. But yeah, we have that here. You can cycle through some tips like this one, filter toolbar F5. Man, that's a good tip. For anybody who's ever had that little purple filter icon and they're like, how do I get rid of this thing? F5. So cool. Let's go to our open. We're going to open a document here, and the quick filters is down here in the open dialog in the bottom right hand corner, these. And Noah, you're probably like, what is so special about a couple buttons? But this is actually incredibly useful. So you'll notice in this folder I have lots of different SolidWorks type documents, assembly, part, drawing documents. And if I want to just filter them out to maybe I'm just looking for a part file, I can click on the part one and it'll just only be part documents. If I want to find assemblies, I can click on this and I can see those assemblies just like that. Drawings are the same way.
Yeah.
You can just click on the drawings and then it's just drawing. But my favorite one by far is the filter top level assembly. And so this might take some time depending on your data because it has to do the sort of recursion algorithm to figure out what assembly sets or what assembly files don't have any parents. But here you can see there's 4 in here that don't have parents. And so if I'm looking for the top level, usually you can kind of figure it out from the name, or maybe you just look at the size of the file. This one's 34 meg, so I'm going to assume that's going to be the top level. And so that's just a really,
I
really
would
handy
definitely
way
say,
to get to that top level.
Yeah, I think anyone who's been using CAD for a while, the more and more you get into it, the more files you have, that data management becomes so important. So I could definitely see this being useful once you start to stockpile all those files.
Oh yeah, definitely. Now, something that some eagle-eyed viewers might be noticing is this last column over here, SW last saved with, and you can see the different versions of these files and when they were last saved. This is installed with SolidWorks, so if you want to access that, you can just right-click on any of these up here, go to More, and then just type SW on your keyboard. That'll drop you down to this area, and you have SW last saved with and even open time. So you can say OK to both of those. And that's some really nice information there. You'd otherwise have to right click, go to properties or whatever. But here you can see how long it takes for that thing to open from the last time and all that sort of stuff. So
a lot of customization available too.
Yeah. So that's quick filter. And I didn't point out, these aren't in any particular order. The order is, I guess sort of the order I'm going to show them. They're not in order of like which one's my favorite. They're all my favorite, so I can't pick just one, how come
you can't choose a favorite one. They're all so great. Oh, that's awesome.
So next one here is resolve on demand. So let's head back over to SolidWorks. And to explain what this resolve on demand thing is, I first want to talk about some of our performance modes. So here, for example, when I'm selecting on my assembly that I want to open, I have these 3 modes here. We have large design review, lightweight, and resolved. And so resolved is where you load the whole assembly, all of the graphic information, all of the mates, all of the parts, the features of those parts, the feature tree, everything. That's all loaded. So you have the most editing power. However, it does take the longest to open because there's a lot of data. Large design review is on the other end of that spectrum where you have only graphic information is loaded, but it loads extremely quickly. And you do have some options around like, maybe some editing abilities, like maybe adding some mates or something like that, which that was sort of introduced in 2019 with large design review being able to edit that. And then lightweight is somewhere in the middle. So lightweight has been around for a really long time, I think since the 90s, maybe 1999, something like that. And then we introduced large design review mode in 2012, and that was huge. So just kind of show you what that looks like. I'm going to open our sewing machine in large design review mode. And of course we see what the abilities are of large design review mode and the edit abilities. So you can, pan, zoom, rotate, you can measure some distances, create cross sections, that sort of thing. And there's some capabilities here, like being able to create and edit mates and stuff like that. And once I hit OK, it's going to start loading, and you'll see, boom, just like that, this assembly of 300
that was quick.
some odd components, it just loads up super quickly. So pan, zooming, and rotating, no problem. It's very fast, very easy. We can pan like that, zoom. So it's just super fast, loads very, very quickly. Now, there's some limitations. If we look at the feature tree, it really just shows you the structure of the tree. It doesn't really give you, any of the other information like the planes or the features of the parts or anything like that. But that's okay. In most cases, when you're talking about a design review, you don't necessarily need all that. We can do things like section views. We can even do like a little double section view situation here. So something like that. So, we've got some section views. Maybe we want to measure something, zoom in, grab a quick measurement. So there we go. So, oh.
That's a gorgeous section view. And I think it really shows just how much more is, in this model than people even realize. When I first thought of a sewing machine, I'm like, yeah, it's got a motor, it's got the needle, but there's belts in there, springs, all types of components that, Solidworks handles so well.
Exactly. So, you're somewhat limited, but that's okay. I mean, if you want, you have the option to, resolve any or all of these. I'm going to set it to lightweight. We'll go to that next mode up so you can kind of see what that looks like. And lightweight mode is a really good in between because it does load a lot of information, but it also still loads it very, very quickly. And there you go. So that was, I said one sentence and now this thing is loaded up. And, still pan, zoom, rotate, everything works just fine. But we have access to things like, let's say, our animations, for example. So, we can view our animation here. This is a really nice animation that we plugged in here. The thing is, like, the large design review mode is so necessary, though. Like when I was in manufacturing, and I needed to do a review with the management team about some of the equipment that we were installing. They wanted to see that, and I wanted to show them that in SolidWorks, but they wouldn't come to our grungy engineering little room that's inside the manufacturing. There's no AC.
Right.
They wanted to be in the nice conference room with the leather chairs and all that stuff. So the computer in there was awful, though. It was so underpowered. So like just getting SolidWorks installed on that computer was a miracle. But then trying to show something on that computer, it would just bog it down. So large design review mode really came to the rescue because I could actually open the thing on this low powered computer. So, these modes have some real significance and real good use. But we like lightweight mode, and with lightweight mode, you can kind of move the components up and down and all that. We also have
amazing. And the animations too, I have to say, especially, it's so great before you're in that manufacturing stage to see how it's going to work before you actually make it. So useful, helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this is one of the big, powerful capabilities of SolidWorks, just being able to make sure everything is working smoothly before you manufacture one thing, right? So what are some differences here? So, over in lightweight mode, I guess the thing I want to get back to is that resolve on demand. This came out 2021. And you'll notice in the feature tree over here to the left-hand side, we have these little feathers. So these indicate that you're in lightweight mode. And, that's fine. Before 2021, if you expanded this, you would still receive very little information. But with Resolve on Demand, every time you expand one of these nodes, notice that the feather is going to disappear. So in the background, it's just going to load that particular item. And to me, this is incredibly powerful. So I can drill down and I can even see in the part level all the different features. So the idea here is you can use lightweight mode 100% of the time because you're only going to load the things that you actually want to edit. And when you focus on a particular assembly or part, it'll just load that on demand at the time that you need it. So since 2021, I've only been using lightweight mode with everything because it loads super quick. And I can still get the editing power that I need from the resolve mode, but I can just be razor focused on that. It's like using a scalpel versus an axe, right?
That's awesome. And definitely, I would say focuses the computer power exactly where you want it as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like right now we're doing a stream and it's video and all this other stuff. So if I was doing resolved, the things would be real choppy and be difficult to move around. So yeah, it's much better this way for sure. Okay, next one, we're going to stay with assemblies. We're going to talk about quick mates real quick. I didn't mean to do that pun, but yeah, we're going to do quick mates. So let's open up a little subassembly here. So I've got this one. And so as you can see, I have a couple of mates here that I need to complete. So let's move this up. Now, the original method of mating items is just to use the mate tool. And you have your different mates here, standard, mechanical, advanced, that sort of thing. So, and with the standard, you have coincident, parallel, tangent, those normal ones. Mechanicals, cam, gear, rack and pinion. Advanced has some path mates and stuff. But usually you're going to use the standard one for most things. So let's say for these pieces of hardware, they need to go into these holes. Let's go ahead and get them mated in place. So the way that it works is you just select the two items and let SolidWorks show you the solution. So now with these, they're allowed to move freely. Just left click, mouse button, and drag. If I want to rotate the item, right click and drag. Lets me rotate it, so that's really convenient. So I can see this face right here, for example. And then I'm just going to select that face and select this one, and we see SolidWorks will put it together. Now I have this context window. This was relatively new, but in the past you didn't have this, so you'd have to move your mouse cursor back over here and make sure you got the mate selected properly. If you want to change the alignment from the back to the front, you have that choice, and then hit the green check. Of course, we're pinned here, so I can do another mate. So let's say I want to do this circular edge and this arc, and we can do that as well. Again, normally I'd come back here, I have the choice to lock the rotation. That's relatively new as well. And then, confirm that. So you would have to kind of do that, and this is a lot of this back and forth stuff. So what is quick mates? If I do effectively the same maneuver or mechanism, but instead of going into the mate tool, I'm just going to select this face and then hold the control key down on my keyboard, which is sort of a standard Windows mechanic, right? We're going to select multiple things. So control select this face, and now I have this pop-up bar that gives me access to all these different mates here. So coincident, parallel, perpendicular, as well as even limit angle mates and limit distance mates and distance mates. So, anything that would apply to those particular selections are available. So here, of course, we're going to choose coincident. And again, I have the choice to flip the mate alignment if I want right there. So very convenient. We can do another mate
So
here.
essentially it's anticipating your next step.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And it's just much quicker because everything's next to my mouse cursor. So I don't have to move the mouse cursor all over the place just to get the job done. And if you're doing mates like this, which, yeah, I mean, this could be, half a day's work right here, boiled down to like an hour basically. So here again, I have an option to lock rotation, for example. So, okay. But I'm gonna do a couple that I like as well. So Quick Mates was 2014, that little pop-up thing where we got. But there's also something called Profile Center Mate that came out the year after that, where you could select, for example, any circular or rectangular profiles in any combination, like these two. And then you have this extra one here, Profile Center Mate. And that just locks the two centers of those profiles onto each other. Even gives you the option to set a distance mate if you want, and even lock the rotation. So especially for things like fasteners, that's super quick. Just the one mate and it's there. So that was Profile Center Mate in 2015. But one of my favorites, especially for something like this, is even better. I'll do you one better. It's called Smart Mating. And it takes a little bit of practice, but if you hold the Alt key down on your keyboard and click and drag an item like, let's say, this edge onto this other edge and let go, you now have created this new mate right here. So that does both a coincident and a concentric mate at the same time. So very, very quick. So,
yeah, I don't know how many clicks you just saved there by doing that.
So those are the different mates like that. So let's see, let's go back out. Now, since we're talking about mating, I'm gonna get into something called the width mate real quick, just because we're already here. So I have these components. Let's take a look at these. So this one is allowed to kind of rotate here, and the goal is to have this little tab inside that notch. However, if I look at the planes for it, and I'm going to use a special key here, it's called the Q key. Q is in Quail. And Q, introduced last year, 2022, allows me to see just the planes for an object. So notice the planes for this object are kind of like in this X shape. Notice my cursor is telling me to hold on a second. There it goes. And then this plane, it doesn't have, there's no planes that I can use that, are gonna just line up perfectly. So, and that's kind of a shame because, I really need something to line up there. So, what's the solution? Well, I could just kind of mate this edge to this face, and just call it a day. But if I really wanted those to be in, exactly in the center, I'm going to use something called the width mate. So let's go to my mate tool here. This is going to be under advanced mates, and it's called width. There are two width selections that I need. I need the outside ones and the inside ones. So for the outside ones, I'll select, let's say, this face and this face. And then for the inside ones, I'll select these two faces. You'll notice it just moves it right there in the center of those two faces perfectly. And you can choose if you want it to be free in between those two faces, if you want maybe a percentage in between those two faces. So you can say, I want it to be 75% in between to one side or whatever. So you have choices there. I want it to be centered. Okay, and my computer's going pretty slow right now, but I think we're gonna make it. So that's the width mate.
That's super useful. I thought I noticed, and you could tell me otherwise, but that part that you just mated, was that in lightweight mode?
Yeah. So both of these are in lightweight mode. Yeah, very good. So yeah, mating works perfectly well in lightweight mode. I didn't have to resolve them or anything. So this is just graphical information, but SolidWorks still allows me to select the faces.
Awesome.
I have another example just because, I really want to drive this point home. So here's a spring pin inside this thing. And I also want it to be centered in this thing. But I'm going to do that without 4 faces. I'm going to do it with 2 faces and this cylindrical face. So this is pretty cool. I like this one. First, I want to grab that face right there, and it's a little tricky sometimes. So I'm going to use the G key. So I'm going to hit the G key, and I think this was just a little magnifier. But it was introduced, I think, in 2009. So it's been around for a while. And I'm selecting that face now that I've been able to zoom in on it, which is kind of cool.
That's awesome.
I'm gonna hold the control key down, select this face, I'm gonna rotate around again, and let's use that G key one more time to zoom in. Select that face. Oops, awesome. I forgot to hold control. Sorry, guys.
Definitely super useful if you're working with really small parts that have a lot of concentrated features.
Yeah. And this has its own zoom level too, so you can zoom in on just this area. But notice here, my width mate is on that context sensitive bar. So I just selected those 2 faces and that cylindrical face, and now we have that width mate.
That's awesome.
Again, we can zoom in with that G key. So that width mate is now in there, it's locked into the center of there. So I think that's pretty cool. A couple pretty cool enhancements, again, from all over the place. But I think on the top of that list for me is Quick Mates, because it just makes it so fast and easy. So back to, Quick Mates 2014, amazing enhancement, loved it. Okay, so let's keep moving. I've got another one called Tab to Hide. And, a lot of my favorite ones, as you can tell, are just really sort of productivity enhancements, things that just help me get the job done faster. So let's go back to this top level, use Control Tab to move between documents inside my SolidWorks window. And I want to see inside here, but I have all these plastic parts in the way. So normally what I would do is maybe select this item, maybe right click on it, maybe go to hide component, do another hide component here. Hide component. And so, this is
definitely
fine.
Used to doing that when you work with large components.
This is fine. It just takes a couple clicks, not really a big deal. It's normal. However, the thing that kind of becomes problematic is, I want them to come back. So, I can't right click on anything. There's nothing to right click. So, one of the best ways I found was just to use this little caret over here, and I can kind of scroll down and I can see the different items. And if I click on this little Tetris piece that's grayed out, they'll start to come back for me. Or if I click on them again, they'll go away. And that, that's fine. I mean, it's not a huge deal. I think another way, maybe a little bit more efficient, is to use this arrow drop down and choose select hidden. So when we select hidden, kind of shows them in this like blue transparent color. I can right click and do show, and they all come back. So again, not a big problem, but every mouse movement to me, is a place where I'm losing efficiency, and I could get the job done faster, get home faster, get started with my weekend faster, right? So, so one of my favorite enhancements is just hovering over an item and hitting the tab key on your keyboard over on the left-hand side. My left hand is sort of always hovering over that side of the keyboard anyways. So just hitting that tab key and just very quickly, these items just melt out of view. Look at that. Perfect. So I can very easily get to what I'm looking for. And if I want to bring any of those back, I just hold Shift while I press Tab. So hover over where the item used to be, Shift Tab, Shift Tab. And notice that SolidWorks is intelligent about it, where it's bringing back the deepest item first before it brings back, let's say, the front cover, right? So I can bring all those back very quickly. And now I'm back to where I was before. Now, this isn't just something that works in only assemblies, right? So in, let's see, in assemblies, we could do that in 2012, but in 2016, they made it available for bodies and parts. So here I have a multi-body part here. And so if I hover over this item in the multi-body part, I can hit Tab and it's gone. Shift Tab brings it back, Tab, and that body's gone. So notice this is a body, or this is a part file with 2 bodies in it. So this is really helpful if you're doing a lot of weldments, sheet metal, multi-body design. That's, I mean, it's indispensable. So 2016 was, for me, like a banner year. There was a ton of really amazing enhancements there. So that is Tab to Hide, one of my favorites. Ready to see more?
Oh, please.
Okay. All right.
Excited. The chat's excited. Definitely want to see some more.
Yeah. What did people say about how long they've been using SolidWorks?
Let me see. We have our producer Ian on the back end. Ian, can you let us know some of those comments?
Cool. All right. So let's keep going. I've got another really nice one here, and the next couple kind of go hand in hand, but I'm gonna try to keep them separated. But in SolidWorks, it's hard to just pick out like one thing to show because you're always showing a bunch of stuff. But Power Trim is another great enhancement for me. Power Trim itself, I think, came out in 2005, and so it's been around for a long time. And I think Trim itself, maybe 1995. I don't know. I think just regular trim has been around since SolidWorks started. So let's talk about doing some power trim here. So here's the scenario I have set up. So a couple things. One, this pin is, it's got a circular profile. And so, maybe it's prone to slipping, when it's inside, this particular nylon holder. And also this thing doesn't have, any kind of like receiving hole for this. So I want to do 2 things. One, I want to create a notch in this pin. And then I also want to have the similar hole for that notch in here so that we solve both those problems at once. So first, let's take a look at this feature. So this is a sweep. And back in, let's see, 2016, again, another great year. One of my favorite years, we had this addition to the sweep options. So instead of requiring that you create a sketch for your sweep, to a sketch profile, you could just tell SolidWorks, I want to use a circular profile and give it a diameter. And so that's really useful, especially if you're doing like, wiring or, something like that, or, pins like this. A circular profile is just very, very common. So right. This was huge. We love this. However, this doesn't really work for me in this particular case, so I'm going to get rid of that. And we're going to create a new one. Now I need to see my planes again, so I'm going to go back to that Q key. Love the Q key. It's great. So that's going to show me my planes. And I want to create another plane up here that I can sketch on. So this is a nice little trick. If you hold the Control key down and click and drag any plane, you can create a parallel plane at whatever distance you want. So let's say 20 millimeters, and we'll confirm that. So now I have quickly my new plane just from using that Q key and dropping that thing in there. So let's create a new sketch on here, and I'm going to zoom in real close because I want to show you some things with this trim. So I want to do some sketching. Of course, I can go to my command manager and select my sketch tab and click on these tools here. But what I would prefer to do is, again, sort of keep everything close to my mouse cursor. Now in 2010, SolidWorks released the mouse gesture wheel. I'm just going to show that off real quick. So if I hold the right mouse button down and kind of wiggle my mouse cursor, I have access to some of my favorite tools. And of course, this is completely customizable. But let's say I want to create a quick circle. It's just as easy as holding down the right mouse button and just swiping to the right. And now I have my mouse or my circle tool. If I want to do the same thing for, let's say, a rectangle, just use my mouse gesture, swipe down, and I've got my rectangle. Now this is a corner rectangle, and I don't want that. But while I'm in my rectangle tool, you'll notice I have the rectangle types. And I could select those with my mouse cursor. But again, I don't like this back and forth movement from my graphics area to the property manager. So I'd prefer to have some sort of really amazing, super cool, genius, IQ level 1 million shortcut to toggle between those. And that is going to be the A key. So if I hit A several times, then you can see I'm cycling through those options. I think A alternate, and it's just going to alternate the different options here. So if I want a center rectangle, just hit A once and I've got my center rectangle. Okay, so I'm going to just select this point here, drag out my center rectangle. I've got some construction geometry associated with that. And let's use my mouse gesture wheel to grab my smart dimension tool. So we're going to fully define this thing, 1.6. And let's say this is going to be 0.5. And we'll do this one too. Let's say 0.5. So that's pretty well defined. However, I need to trim out some of this material. So this goes back to our power trim. And again, that's not new. Power trim has been around for a long time. Trim tool has been around forever. Power trim makes it way more useful because all you have to do is just click and drag through things and they will be trimmed out. So for example, I click and drag through this line, it trims to the nearest lines or vertices. And if I go through these, I can do that too. However, if I trim through this next one, it gets rid of that dimension. It's like, oh, I kind of needed that.
Yeah.
I just did that work, but that's okay. Let me just keep trimming through these. And something else that's kind of a neat trick about power trim, if you accidentally trim something you didn't mean to, notice there's a little red box there. I can just come back through that red box and I can grab that thing back up. So
wow, I actually didn't even know that. I've been using power trim for years and I didn't even know you could go back and do that.
yeah, you've probably worn out the Control Z on that, I'm guessing.
Exactly.
Control Z, undo, definitely, yeah. So that's fine. I've trimmed out my thing. I probably have to do some more dimensioning, but the problem with this I don't like is it's now not very well behaved. This sketch is kind of all over the place now. So the thing that I'm really impressed with, I'm just going to Control Z back to where I was before. Grab my power trim tool again. 2019, we introduced, let me just zoom in here on the property manager so you can see it. This option here, keep trimmed entities as construction geometry. So let's just see the difference here. Now when I do that same exact trimming, instead of deleting the line or removing it, it just turns it into construction geometry. So now my dimensions stay there and my sketch is still very well behaved, which is much preferable. So that's the trim. All right, and now I just want to fully define my sketch here. I'm going to use my Pierce relation, of course. Whenever I'm doing a sweep, I want to use that Pierce relation if at all possible. And now that's my profile and my path are ready for a sweep. But before we get into that, let's reveal my next favorite, which is going to be bidirectional sweep. Okay, so we got bidirectional sweep.
And in the chat, I do want to mention we have some really experienced SolidWorks users. We got Samuel Mayhew with 7 years. We got Mike Puckett and the CTS UG user group at 18 and 16 years, respectively. We have someone in there since 2001. So definitely some really awesome experience there. We have Mike Puckett says, I think Mark should turn this into a 3D Experience World presentation and present it in Nashville in 2023. Love that.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
That would be great. I would just get really nervous, presenting in front of that many people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, that's awesome. And again, if you're just joining us now, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to be notified every time we release new content. Like this amazing content here that Mark's about to dive into. So,
cool.
Back to you.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for communicating and connecting with us in the chat, everyone. That's really cool. So, all right. So yeah, so let's talk about bidirectional sweep. So you might think it was a little weird that I created this plane and did this whole thing here. I could have done it at the end of this or the end of this would have been easier. But I did it on purpose to kind of show off, the bidirectional sweep. So let's create a sweep. So we're going to do features, sweep, and because I'm inside this sketch, it knows that that's going to be the profile. So my path is just simply this line here. And previous to 2016,
I love that. I just have to, when it comes to life and you see all that 3D geometry automatically generate.
Yeah,
love that.
that is cool. Yeah, but there's a problem here, right? It doesn't complete down here. So
right.
In 2015 and before, you were just kind of stuck with this. So you had to do this one, or you had to do this way, and then you had to recreate the sketch, do it again, and then do it in the other direction. It was a whole thing. So you had to have like two different things. So 2016 introduced these buttons here. So now I have bidirectional sweep. So instead of having to do one direction or the other, I have both directions on my sweep, which is just amazing. I use sweep all the time, and so this is incredibly useful for me. And so we can confirm that. So let's hide this plane. And now we need to create the hole for this, right? So if I hover over my swept body, oh, you know what?
So are these the same component now, or is that going to be a different body?
Yeah, so they're the same solid mass. I forgot to uncheck merge result. So when I go into my sweep, make sure I don't check merge result. And now I actually have two separate bodies. We can see from the solid bodies folder. Got it. Almost missed that. But yeah, if I hit tab here, of course, to hide the swept body, we can see there's no hole there. That's okay. I'm going to do something. This is another one. It's hard for me to choose which of the sweep features I like more, but the fact that I don't have to create another sketch profile here is pretty amazing. So 2018, we introduced this, and I'm going to create the hole that's required for this pin. But just using already existing geometry. So if I go to my features, swept cut, we need that profile here. Let's just set our view to hidden lines visible. And I have the end of this face here. So I'm going to select that. Let's try this. Sorry, let me go back to that, just mispicked. So I'm trying to select that, it's not letting me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose select other and then grab that face. So got the face there in that profile. Now I need the profile sketch. Let me just expand my flyout feature manager tree. I'm just going to reuse the swept sketch from before. Okay. And we can go back to this. And so now I have a sketch profile just using that face. So I didn't, you know what? I think I selected that improperly. Let's try this again. Okay,
And while you're doing that, we also did get a question in from the chat. Can you provide an explanation of tangent to adjacent face? Explanation of sweep profile tangent to adjacent face.
Right. Okay, perfect. Yes. Yeah, we can definitely do that. So let's say, let's see, is this a good example of that? So let's go to, I think they might mean tangent to, I don't know which one. There's a lot of options in here. I'm not exactly sure which one you're talking about. So there's a couple of options in here that kind of trick people a little bit. So you have profile orientation, where you're going to follow the path or keep the normal constant. So for example, with this follow path, it keeps the path normal to that sketch profile. But if I do keep normal constant, it won't give me a preview of that because it's trying to twist way too much. So I don't have a good example of that right here. But this, but that's an option that sometimes people get hung up on. Merge tangent faces, align with end faces. Align with end faces is maybe the one they're talking about where if you're trying to create a cut and it doesn't go all the way up to like a face and it might leave like a little bit of a sliver there. If you click on align with end faces, it'll cut through the whole thing.
I think it's coming in now on the chat.
Okay.
The person is referring to in profile twist, the last option.
Oh, tangent to adjacent faces. Okay. Interesting. Okay. Well, if we talk about profile twist. So for example, just the basic option. Throughout this, my computer's hanging up again. Hold on. There we go. So I can specify, like if I want this to be 180 degrees of twist, you'll see that through this whole sweep, it twists that profile 180 degrees. See how this slot here gets twisted 180 degrees? So we have that one. We can specify a direction vector for that of where the twist is going to be. Again, this won't be a good example of that. And then, yeah, tangent to adjacent faces. I don't have an example of it here, but the idea is, when you're twisting a profile, there's a couple of ways that you can twist it. Like, so for example, like, does the twist go through the centroid of the sketch geometry, or is the twist meant to be about some exterior vertex or exterior point? And so you can specify, the twist to adjacent faces. Like, it just helps you control the twist. I don't know. I need to have a good example ready for you.
I think they're referring to like when you twist a spring, maybe, if that's helpful. Sure. Either way, we can make a note of this, and we will absolutely follow up with that question.
Yeah, we'll make a note. Follow up with that one. I don't have a good example at hand, but yeah, that's is a good question. So,
definitely, yeah. Thank you for that in the chat.
Yeah, thank you. So, right. So let's get back to this, and let's get back to this guy. So we're doing a cut sweep, and again, we're just using this face rather than creating a whole new profile and creating it. So created my cut. Let's go back to our regular view here. And when I tab to get rid of that, you'll notice I now have this cut here, and it's exact geometry of this this face here. So that's just a great way for me to not have to create like a whole nother sketch profile or whatever, for example. So okay, so bidirectional sweep. Again, it was hard for me to choose which sweep enhancement I wanted to put here, but I use sweep a lot, and this was just a really helpful one for me. So, okay, next one, breadcrumbs. Okay, so I got a couple good examples for this. So
this is one of my favorites in Next Design as well. Definitely super useful.
Yeah, it's so helpful. So when I created this solid sweep, with the material in the part is this nylon 610, and it just assigns the material to all the bodies, but I don't want this body to be nylon. I want it to be like a steel material. So traditionally what I would do before 2016, again, 2016 was a great year, I would have to expand, let's say, the solid bodies folder, find the sweep body that I was looking for, and then I could change the material from here. It just takes again, it's more of this mouse movement. You're opening up these folders, a lot of clicks. So instead, if I select the sweep in the graphics area, you'll notice in the top left corner, I have the face I selected, the feature that it belongs to, the body it belongs to, and the part it belongs to, all in order. So it's this little hierarchy tree called breadcrumbs. Just kind of shows you where you came from, right? So that's pretty cool. And in fact, you can even get to the sketches here, and you can right-click on these and edit it. And then, of course, I can right-click on the body, and I can go to material, and I can change the material here. Is that really that great of an enhancement? I mean, I still have to go like pretty close to the feature tree. I mean, it's a few less clicks, it's a little less mouse movement. But also in 2016, coupled with this enhancement, was a really nice keyboard shortcut, the D key. So D is in David. If I select the same face and I hit the D key, now the breadcrumbs come right to my cursor. So then I can very easily right-click here, change that material, let's say to plain carbon steel. And that's just way more efficient. It's way better. It doesn't just work, however, in parts. It also works at the assembly level. So if I take a look at my top level assembly, let's use my tab key to maybe hide some things. And I want to open this subassembly. If I select this component and go to open, it's going to open the part. But if I use my D key, it's going to bring my breadcrumbs here. So I have the face of the part, the feature, the body, the part, and the subassembly that it belongs to. Selecting the subassembly from the breadcrumbs allows me to open the whole subassembly in the window here. Pretty cool. And then I can turn this because this is an amazing little assembly here.
Yeah, that motion is just incredible.
That is breadcrumbs and the D key shortcut. Now you can also use the D key to bring the confirmation corner to your cursor as well. So if you're trying to exit a sketch or exit a feature, you can also use the D key there. I'll show that a little bit later. Now we're wrapping up here pretty quickly. I know we got about 10 minutes, so I think I can get through these in that time, but we have replace sketch entities. This to me like blows my mind. This has saved me so many times. So I'd love to share it with you. I have a little cam on the back here, and when I move this, we can see that there's a little cam motion going on. That's pretty nice. It's got a little bit of a lobe there. And this, if I select on this item in the graphics area, it highlights in the feature manager tree. Notice that it is lightweight mode, but if I expand it, I can resolve that and I can see everything that I need to see about that component, including, let's say, the mates. So here we can see I have 3 mates and a cam mate. So this cam mate tangent is what's controlling that. So, those faces need to be constantly in contact with each other. And I'd also like to point out, if you're looking at my feature tree, you can see this kind of blue arrow going on. So this is called Dynamic Reference Visualization, and it was released in 2017. So not 2016, but 2017, a year later. That's okay.
Still a good year.
A little bit of a late bloomer, but that's all right. Didn't roll in with the rest of them, but excuse me. But yeah, we have this dynamic reference visualization, and what it's telling me is it's saying what are the dependent items for this particular cam mate. So I know that this cam mate is reliant on those 2 components, of course, but not just the components. It's showing me what features it's referencing just visually. I just have to hover over it. In the past, you would have to right click and choose parent child and kind of look at it this way, and you're like, I don't know, what's the parent, the child? I don't get it, and it doesn't even show you the feature. So here, reference visualization shows you the feature. And of course, if you hover over knit, you can see that its parent items here are split line and boss extrude 2. So I can very easily get to an understanding of this component just by using that visualization. What's also useful here, and really understanding the ins and outs of this component, is that if I make changes to this boss extrude, it's going to have downstream effects, and I know exactly what features are going to be affected by it. So let's do some effects. Let's make something happen here. So normally I would select this item and I would open it in its own window, but just for fun and just to show another one of my favorite enhancements, I'm going to open it in the component preview window. And can you guess what year component preview was released?
Let's say 2016.
It was 2016. Man, you must really know your stuff. So
that's a good year. That's going to be our benchmark.
Yeah.
For this year's 2023.
I've done this a couple of times, like in practice, and I never made the association that many of these are from 2016. So that's just happened just now. But this component preview window was released, and it really is helpful when you're doing things like mating. So when you need to mate, but it's kind of in a odd position or something like that, you can open this component preview window and select something from here, select something from here, and the mate dialog will pop up, and it's nice for that. You can also sync the windows together so you can see them rotate together.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah,
really
cool. It's also just a convenient place to maybe make some short changes. So here I want to select this boss extrude. Notice I can click the face of that, and then I can edit the sketch of that boss directly from here. I'm going to use my F key to zoom to fit, and right now what's controlling the shape of that is this ellipse shape. So that's the ellipse shape there. But I would prefer to control it with a spline. That gives me a little more control over that cam motion and how much that goes up and down. And the ellipse just isn't doing it for me. So I started with the ellipse, it's fine, but I really want to use my spline because it's more control. Now, if I just delete this or convert this to construction geometry and then turn this construction geometry into solid geometry, we're going to have problems. So I'm going to close this sketch and you're going to see some issues. Now, normally this is going to affect the surface knit might be affected. In this case, Solidworks decided to be nice to me. But if I wasn't broadcasting right now, the whole tree would just be completely red. Solidworks have a big problem with this, right? And of course, our cam mate is having a problem because it can't reference the face that it was using before. When I did that change, I changed the face ID of that boss, and so now SOLIDWORKS is completely confused. So let's just do a couple Control Z's here and get back to square one. Okay, so instead of just changing this construction geometry and so forth, this sort of brute force method, we're going to use replace sketch entities released in 2014, this little button right here, replace entity. So I select that. SolidWorks asks me what I want to replace it with, so I'm just going to replace it with this spline and then confirm it. So effectively it's the same thing, but I went through replace entities, and now no errors, no issues.
Wow.
We can
Awesome.
exit that. We can now move this about, and we now have the new cam motion with that yeah, now we have that new cam motion. Just kind of rotate it around here so you can see it. Right. And so no errors, no problems. So this has saved me a boatload of times, just being able to go in and say, you know what, I need that straight line to be an arc. Okay, well, I'm going to do that, and it's going to mess up all the downstream features. It's going to be a big problem. So this, in my opinion, much, much better.
Definitely. And I would definitely say I have not taken enough advantage of that component preview. It's almost like having two windows of SolidWorks open, but not actually opening SolidWorks twice. So it's a little bit easier on your computer. So that's super easy. I know we only have a couple minutes left, and we still have two great features to cover. We did get a question, if you're able to get to it, a simple explanation on magnetic mates.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, I don't have an example for magnetic mates here.
Okay.
But they're really useful for things like, let's say a conveyor system, for example. So if you're, if you need to put like sort of like pieces that go together a lot, instead of just having them in there and then using quick mates or smart mates to create new links and relations with them, you can pre-build those components with little magnetic dots, and then they can just sort of click together like Lego pieces. So you can set them all up like that. In fact, if you had Lego pieces, you could do it like that. I created once a library of piping components, pipe nipples and elbows and stuff like that. And I created those with configurations. They had magnetic mates on them. So, when you would kind of get them close to each other, they would just sort of snap in place. You just have your 1/2-inch elbow going into your 1/2-inch, pipe nipple, whatever. And then you could just kind of build out, whatever piping that you needed, selecting the different configurations as you go. And they would just kind of all click together like little Lego pieces. Saved a ton of time. And, it's not that much time maybe for an experienced SolidWorks user. But if you wanted to hand that task off to somebody that's maybe less experienced, it's way easier for them to pick up on magnetic mates, than it would be for them to kind of, learn, well, okay, this is how you appropriately mate it. Make sure you get the orientation appropriate. And, it's just a lot easier, for you and for anybody else that needs to do it. So great question.
No, thank you for that explanation. And thank you for the question.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I don't know when it came out, but I think it was pretty recently, maybe in the past 5 years or so, if I remember.
I'm going to make a conservative guess and say 2016.
Let's go with 2016. Let's go with 2016. Okay, two more. Again, these aren't in order of like how much I like them. They're just in order of like easy for me to show you. But we have Instant 3D. And I'm already hearing the groans in the chat. Oh no, Instant 3D. I really like Instant 3D, and let's give you a quick example of why I think it's pretty cool. So let's open this bearing here, and I have a sketch here, kind of this gray color. Maybe I'll change that in my settings so you can see that a little bit better. Go to my settings. I can go down to sketch, comma, inactive. Let's edit that. Let's just make it a pretty, what kind of teal color or something like that. There we go. So we can see that better. So I have this like little sketch here. It's just on the front face of this part. So if I select, let's say, an item in that sketch, I get a little orange arrow. And with Instant 3D turned on, I can just drag that arrow out if I want to create a boss. Or if I push this in, I can create a cut. It has this nice little handy ruler here for me, so I can just kind of zone in on exactly where I want that to be. Also, while I do that, there are some options in the property manager that I don't have access to because I just did Instant 3D, but they bring them here to my cursor. So I can turn draft on, or if I intended for this to be a boss rather than a cut, then I can switch it here. In this case, let's say I want to turn the draft on. You can see a little 1 degree draft being added there. We can continue with Instant 3D. We can select that face and change it. So very easy to manipulate this. We can also adjust the settings of the sketch. So we can see the sketch here in and out, if I want to make it wider or not. Do that again, that's, has the ruler associated with it too. So, it's just very easy to sort of manipulate these items and get them into place. Maybe, and it's a lot easier than, selecting it, maybe double clicking, this, maybe going into the sketch, that sort of thing. So Instant 3D released in 2008. So that was a long time ago. Now, very recently, again in 2016, I'm just bringing this up because it's the same year. Let's say I want to edit this sketch. Okay, and this isn't a very complex sketch, but you could imagine with sketches that are more complicated that this would be very useful. But there is an option for Instant 2D as well. And it's kind of similar, but it works inside the sketch environment. So if I select this sketch, I have the little blue orb, and I can just drag that out or push it in. So, and you can get an immediate feedback on what that change will look like for your sketch. So you can make all these changes just by clicking and dragging and, sort of massaging your sketch without having to, double click it, get this thing, type the number, hit check. And sometimes when you hit check, there are algorithms inside SolidWorks that doesn't actually rebuild the sketch because it might take more computing power, might take more time. So with Instant 2D, it just does all of that. So let's just discard those changes. Okay, go back to where we were before. Cool. Okay. All right. Instant 3D, Instant 2D, and then last one, drum roll please, is Command Search. Now this definitely is one of my favorites, and it's hard to imagine living without it, to be completely honest. So I think Command Search originally came out in 2012, but there's definitely some significant improvements to it that I do want to show. So let's say we want to.
Sorry to interrupt. I just want to say we also got a comment in saying Instant 3D and Power Trim. They almost seem like cheating when modeling in SolidWorks.
Yeah,
and I definitely agree with that. They show so quickly. The preview shows great. So yeah, thanks for showing us that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's another. I want to put some fillets on here. Another quick shortcut that I always use all the time is just selecting the edge and then selecting fillet or chamfer from this pop-up window. That's great. Hit 0.3 enter to just set the amount. Another one that I really like, I don't know when this came out, but is the context sensitive collection of edges. So SolidWorks has just these edges that you can collect as well. So I'm going to select this one. It grabs all those features, and I'm going to use my D key, right, to bring this checkbox to my mouse cursor. So that means I don't have to go up to this top right corner, to this top left corner. I can just use the D key and confirm that right there. And again, if I want to change that, I can grab the little blue sphere and I can change how big the fillet is. But what I want to do now is I want to create a circular pattern of these features. So normally I would go to my features tab and kind of browse through here. I don't see circular pattern, so I'm trying to find it. Well, why don't I go to my command search up here in the top right corner? It says search commands, and I can just type CIRC, and there's circular pattern right there. I can select here to use the tool, or if I'm curious as to where it's located, I can use this little creepy eyeball, and it's going to jump my mouse cursor over to this area, which shows me the circular pattern in the dropdown, which is nice. Now, before command search even came out, there was a keyboard shortcut that I use all the time called the S key, and that was released in 2009, I think, and it got some improvements here recently. In 2021, we now, or was it 2022? 2021, I think, we brought search commands to the S key. So the S key is just a place where you can keep some of your commands that you use often, and you can customize this, of course, but you can also search right from here. So S key, and then just start typing CIRC, and there's your circular pattern. The enhancement that I like the most, probably out of all of this, is that if I use this tool a lot, and I just find myself searching for it a bunch, I can just use this plus icon to insert the command. So that's a very quick way to customize this menu
Oh, that's cool.
without having to do a bunch of other stuff. So if, I'll find, what's another one I use all the time? Dome command. I use that so often. Just kidding. I don't ever use that.
So that's a new one for me too. I didn't know the SQ was customizable.
Flex command. I can add flex here. That's another one. If anybody in the chat has their favorite feature that they'll never use, what's the features that are just sitting there that you've never even opened? So we have, you can quickly customize those. So let's use our circular pattern here. And I'm just going to select the faces of my fillet and my boss extrude, and then we'll just do a quick circular pattern. So we can do, add more to that, add less, whatever we need to do. Again, use my D key to bring the check or the confirm box to my cursor, say OK. And now I have all of those in place. Control tab back to here, and we can see that looks great. While we're talking about search, and I think the last one that I'll leave you with is another one of my favorite ones. 2013, you go to your system options under tool system options, tool options. You can search since 2013 for your options here. So let's say you didn't like the way that the mouse wheel zoomed in or out and you wanted to reverse the direction. So we could say like mouse, we just type in here mouse, and it tells you the options. You can click on these. So you can change your mouse speed, your mouse wheel zoom direction, and whether or not the breadcrumbs are shown at your mouse pointer. Very cool. What about tangent edges being visible? We could say, okay, we've got display, part assembly tangent edge display set to removed. I can set that to visible, for example, and say okay. So now we can change that display there. Now that's in a lot of different places. I think we can see it better here. You can also go to view, display, tangent edges, visible or removed. But it is nice to have this information here where you can just search these options, and you could say like image quality. You can go find image quality and change this information so your parts load faster, that sort of thing. So, all right. So that is that. Let's get our sewing machine back in order here.
And I love that searching capability because SolidWorks really is just so extensive, so feature rich that you could really just kind of get lost in it. So I'm glad you were able to highlight that one.
Yeah, there's just so many options there.
Oh, wow, look at that.
Yeah, so we did go a little bit over. Sorry about that, but I hope everybody found some cool enhancements, maybe some that they forgot about and want to incorporate it into your daily design work, or maybe you found one you didn't know about at all, and so you can incorporate that. So let us know like what your favorite one was from today or just any time. I mean, this has been a lot of fun putting this together. I mean, I've gone all the way back to like the 90s, so it's like I've taken like a little time machine back. So yeah, but these are all of the ones that I went over today, I think in the appropriate order. So yeah.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you so much, Mark. I definitely learned a lot from these features, some that came out, a long time ago that I didn't even know existed. Hopefully in the chat, you found one as well. Like Mark said, drop your favorite one, but also maybe drop a feature that we didn't cover that we could possibly cover in a future episode. We always want to do that. I do want to point out 2 other live events where you can continue to learn more about SolidWorks and perfect your design skills. We have a manufacturing live event, a look back at IMTS on September 27th at 11 a.m., where they're going to show the big takeaways from that huge, amazing trade show. It's going to feature Mike Buckley interviewing Chris McBain, who's a new addition to our team. And on the 29th, we're going to be covering a lot of what we covered today, but in much more depth. What's new with SolidWorks 2023? So Mark's going to be there. I'm going to be there. Andrew, who's behind the scenes producing the show, he's got a lot to say on that show as well. We're going to be covering optimizing workflows, design, simulation, data management, you name it. 11 a.m., September 29th. Be there for that. And again, if you want to find any of these recorded episodes or find out when the next episode's going to be, it's going to be on live.solidworks.com. So check that out. Like and subscribe to keep up with the latest updates. And Mark, anything else you want to share with our audience before we close out?
Oh man, thanks Noah for having me and hosting me. Thanks to Andrew and Ian in the background for
Yes,
making
big
just
thanks
such a
to them.
smooth show for us. That's amazing. That it just allows me to just kind of have a bunch of fun here and just kind of show a bunch of cool stuff. And just thanks to everyone for joining us today and just watching me fool around with SolidWorks for a little bit. It's a passion that I think we all share.
Right.
I think it's just so cool that there's just we've been doing this for since 1995. I mean, it's just kind of crazy. So like this is just a small handful of like all the amazing stuff that's packed into this software. And it's just kind of cool to go back. Sometimes we forget about like, just what we used to have to do. Like SolidWorks crashes on me. I'm like, oh man, this is bad. But it's like, but I mean, it's just, we've come a long way from, the early days
But
of
now we know if
SolidWorks.
it crashes on you, go to the lightweight version.
Yeah, yeah, you do
You know?
want to make sure. Yeah. But thanks again, Noah. It's been amazing. I really appreciate it. And thanks so much to the audience.
Yeah, thanks again, everyone. And have a great weekend and the rest of your Friday.